It's D-U-E-U tell I see you by this point you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
From the Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show, I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we are entering week 9 of the NFL season. Not quite at the midway point just yet, but that'll be next week. But here we are, ready to break down this week's action, and there's a lot to dive into this episode. But first, be sure to follow me on social media. That's Twitter at FBallGamePlan, Instagram is Football Game Plan, one word, and on YouTube.com/FootballGamePlan. So let's start with a preview of tonight's game between the New York Jets and Indianapolis Colts. Now, here are my 3 keys to victory for this ball game for Gang Green, and as they enter this season, or this matchup, with a 2-5 record on the season. It's about getting quarterback Mike White very comfortable in the pocket. We know the Indianapolis Colts will be extra aggressive up front, trying to make Mike White jittery in the pocket. So it's up to offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur to get him very comfortable very quickly. If he's able to do that with a combination of quick passes, some boots, some waggles, a little bit of screen game, it sets White up for success for the rest of the way and allows him the opportunity to prove that last week's success wasn't a fluke. Second, I would try to get Michael Carter, the sensational rookie, established as well. We know Carter has a talent and has shown flashes that he can be the guy to lead this Jets offense in the backfield, but they have to let him do so and not fool around with getting everyone equal touches. I know it's common to spread the carries around, but it also limits a running back's ability to get into a groove within a game, and that's not what you want. Now, defensively, this one is a no-brainer. You want to close the door on Carson Wentz, who does a great job of escaping and extending plays, and while he may not be as nimble as he was early in his career, he's still a very difficult guy to bring down. So the Jets' pressure has to be more about push instead of just flying upfield. And in concert with that, it's about making the plays that are there to be made. Wentz will give you at least 2 to 3 opportunities in a ball game to turn the ball over or get him on the ground. So they have to be able to take full advantage and make sure they capitalize on those opportunities. So let's move over to the Colts in this game as they're coming off of a tough overtime loss to the Tennessee Titans in a game that they had won both in regulation and in overtime. They really have to get it together as there are little to no room for error for the Colts, and that move toward the top of the AFC South and or toward the playoffs has to start tonight against the Jets. So let's break down what I think should be the 3 keys to victory for the Colts. Firstly, let's tie up loose ends. If the Colts can't do the little things correctly, like penalties, drop passes, busting assignments, then they can't expect to win games this season. Tie up the little things, and the big things will more than likely take care of themselves. It's a big reason why they are 1-3 in the AFC South with that lone victory coming against the lowly Houston Texans. You can't beat the good teams if you're making simple mistakes. Second, at the end of the day, this is still an inexperienced quarterback in Mike White that you're facing for the New York Jets. And as impressive as tossing 400 yards in a game is, he still threw 2 interceptions and probably should have thrown 3 more. I said a lot to say this. He will give Indy multiple opportunities to make plays. And just like I mentioned earlier about Carson Wentz, it's about taking advantage and making the plays that are there to be made. Lastly, they have to put the Jets away early. That's what the Cincinnati Bengals failed to do. And they allowed the Jets to hang around, gain confidence, and ended up losing to a Mike White-led team. Now, if the Colts have an opportunity to put the Jets away early, they have to take full advantage to do so and not let them on the hook, or off the hook, that is. Now, let's take a look at some of the game within the game matchups from a numbers perspective, like the Jets offense versus the Colts defense. Now, the Jets haven't figured out their run game this season. They averaged just 3.6 yards a carry, 3rd worst in the NFL. The Colts have successfully held their opponent's run game in check. They allow 4 yards a carry this season. That's 8th best in the NFL. The Jets have struggled gaining first downs this season. They average 18.3 first downs a game, 5th worst in the NFL. The Colts allow 20 first downs per game, and that's tied for 8th lowest in the NFL. And turnovers could play a factor. The Colts are +8 in the turnover margin this season. That's tied for 2nd best in the NFL. The Jets are -10 in turnovers this year, 3rd worst margin in the league. The Colts are plus 44 in points off turnovers all season, the second best margin in the NFL. And the Jets are minus 28 in points off turnovers. That's the fifth worst margin. Now, the Jets have also thrown an interception on 5% of their pass attempts this season. That's the worst rate in the NFL. The Colts opposition has thrown an interception on 3.5% of their pass attempts this season. That's the fifth highest rate in the NFL. Now, here are some player notes that you want to keep an eye on. Carson Wentz ranks 25th out of 33 qualified quarterbacks with 7.6 air yards an attempt this year. And the Jets are allowing 7.3 air yards an attempt, the eighth fewest in the NFL. 19% of Wentz passes are for negative yards. That's ridiculous to think about. 10th highest percentage among 33 qualified quarterbacks this year. And the Jets opposition throws 18% of their passes for negative yards this season, seventh highest percentage in the NFL. Wentz averages 5 yards per attempt on passes with negative air yards behind the line of scrimmage, 17 most in the NFL. And the Jets defense allows 6.5 yards an attempt on passes with negative air yards. That's third most in the league. Now, Mike White averaged 7.9 yards an attempt in his 2 appearances this season, which would put him 10th amongst qualified quarterbacks if he had enough attempts. And the Colts defense are showing that they're having the ability to make plays on the ball and doing a good job in stopping quarterbacks from having those attempts. So all in all, it's going to be key for both Mike White and Carson Wentz to play their best game. If that is able to happen, then either team has a great chance to win. But what I do see happening is more along the lines of the Colts having the defense to force Mike White to play like we expected him to play against Cincinnati. They'll capitalize on some of those turnover opportunities, and I think they'll win the game. So I like Indy to come away victorious.
Man, it's that old thing, perseverance, consistency, hard work. My goal is to put the same work into, my businesses, my family that I put into football, and I've been running with that mantra since I got married back in '97, that if I'm going to have a successful marriage, I got to, the same hard work and same consistency and discipline I had in the football field, I got to put in my marriage and with my kids and with my businesses and all that. So it teaches you a lot, man. How to deal with your fellow man and not look at his color, but look at what he can do for the overall good of what you're trying to accomplish. So sports to me in general is just an incredible deal when you talk about football specifically because of the closeness of guys. I just believe it's an amazing sport.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Now that we've talked about tonight's game, let's take a look at the Sunday schedule, and we'll start in the 1 o'clock window. And we'll look at Cleveland taking on Cincinnati. It's the Battle of Ohio, but there's all sorts of turmoil going into this ball game. On the Cleveland side of things, you have the Browns not being without Odell Beckham Jr., who was asked to stay home this week as he works through some things. It looks as if they were trying to trade Odell Beckham at the trade deadline, and now it comes out that he may not play the rest of the season, not because of injury, because of turmoil within that Browns organization between he and the offense. So we'll see how it works out. But on the field, the Browns have to find ways to put the points on the board and put the ball in the end zone. I thought Baker Mayfield played a valiant game last weekend against Pittsburgh, but it wasn't enough, as they just couldn't get over the hump and they couldn't score the ball. I'm talking about getting touchdowns against that Steelers defense. They have to fare better this weekend against Cincinnati. Now, on the Bengals side of things, it looked as if they were going to steamroll the Jets. They got down the field early. They got to the goal line, got stopped, got the ball back on the interception, what looked like a pick six, but they ruled them down at the 1, couldn't get in the end zone once again. So here's the thing. They let a team like the Jets hang around. They found their rhythm. And they found some confidence, and then the Bengals found themselves in a dogfight. So the offense was on point, but the defense couldn't get key stops when they needed to against Gang Green. So you have all of that going on between both the Browns and the Bengals, and that brings you to the matchup. Both teams are trying to get back on the winning track. Cincinnati is trying to get back on the winning track in the state, of course, atop the AFC North, and Cleveland is just trying to fight for their playoff lives right now, as their season seems to be going in the wrong direction. Two teams that are desperate, back up against the wall, albeit it's a little bit too early to panic for Cincinnati, but I do like the Bengals to get the job done. and get the win. And let's stay within the middle part of the country and look at Dallas. Well, if you go up from Texas to Ohio, yeah, I guess you could take a direct flight there. Denver takes on the Cowboys, and they travel down to Big D. Now, Denver got themselves a really good win last week against Washington. They tried to give it away with hijinks at the end of the game, turnovers, just sloppy play in general. But they have to clean it up because they're facing one of the top teams in the NFC in the Dallas Cowboys. So the Broncos have to come in. They're going to be without Von Miller. We know they traded him to Los Angeles, and play a really good game on defense, because that's what it's all about. And here's a situation where it's a strength versus strength battle. You have the Broncos secondary matched up against that Cowboys receiving core. I can't wait to watch that matchup. Now, on the offensive side of football, how well can that Broncos offensive line hold up against this defensive front that's very athletic and active of the Dallas Cowboys? That'll be what to watch. You also have two excellent quarterbacks in Teddy Bridgewater and also Dak Prescott. Now look at Dallas in this game. They fooled us last week. We thought we were going to get Dak Prescott out there, but we got Cooper Rush. And he played a fine game against Minnesota. He actually, if we're being completely honest, he outplayed Kirk Cousins out there on the field, and it got the Cowboys to win. Now, all intents and purposes, we should see Dak Prescott this week for the Cowboys, and hopefully he's out there playing like we know Dak Prescott can play. I expect him to do so. We look at that offensive line. They played valiantly against a banged-up Vikings defensive front, but the most important thing about the Cowboys on offense was the fact the receiving core was still as good as they were with Cooper Rush, as they are going to be with Dak Prescott. This is the best team in the NFC, in my opinion. I do like them to take care of business against the Broncos and get the win. Now we head down to South Florida. You have the Houston Texans taking on the Miami Dolphins. And poor Tua Tagovailoa, because you have the talk and non-talk about them getting Deshaun Watson. Then we find out they were talking to Deshaun Watson, or wanted to talk to Deshaun Watson before the trade deadline. That's a hard thing for a young quarterback to deal with while he's trying to go out there and play his best ball on the field for the coaching and the GM, the coaches and the GM that's also entertaining other players at that position. So it's interesting to watch. I feel bad for him because he's not the reason why they're losing. They have to find more productivity out the run game, and that's the biggest thing. If they can do that, they'll be just fine. But overall, it's just a tough go for them. However, in comes the remedy situation called the Houston Texans. It's been a fire sale for Houston. Mark Ingram is in New Orleans. We saw them trade Charles Omenihu, who is an outstanding young prospect up front along the defensive line. And you can't win like that when you're letting go some key players, some stars, some starters on both sides of the ball. So they come into this ball game pretty much bailing on the 2022 season or 2021 season. You hate to say that about a football team, but that's the reality, and I think that's going to hurt them in this one. I like Miami to get the win. Let's head back on I-10 East, I-10 West, that is, to New Orleans, where they host the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this would have been a great game because you have the Jameis Winston effect, him coming off that win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but we know he got injured in that game. So now you have Trevor Siemian, and you hope to have Taysom Hill back in his Taysom Hill role. And that's going to be interesting to watch, or fascinating to watch. If I'm the Saints, I'm trying to get Ian Book ready to hold down that QB2 spot. Therefore, you're not tempted to put Taysom Hill back there as your standard quarterback because you lose everything about what makes him Taysom Hill. But what an unfortunate situation for the Saints. They played their best ball of the season defensively. They got the upset, but they lose their starting quarterback, Jameis Winston, in the process. But they have to turn right back around and face an Atlanta team that has found some offense, that has the ability to put points up on the board. Now, they may be without their star receiver, Calvin Ridley, who's dealing with some mental health issues, and we wish him well. But they still have that rookie out there in Kyle Pitts that can pose a problem. Unfortunately, I don't think their run game is as productive or dominant. It's not going to be dominant, but I don't think it's as scary as it could be if they had another bell cow. But they're getting good production from Kadero Patterson. But right now, I just think the Saints defense should be enough to harass Matt Ryan, and they'll find a way to be productive on offense and eke out another ugly win. I like New Orleans to win this game. Let's head up north to New York, where the Giants play host to the Raiders. And here's a Raiders team that's dealing with their own turmoil as their wide receiver Henry Ruggs III, second-year player, had to be released. They cut him because he got into a horrific DUI out there in an accident out there in Vegas, and they got him off the team. So now you have that coming in along with the whole John Gruden thing. So they're dealing with a lot heading into this matchup against the Giants, who's playing a game where their back is up against the wall because they're 2-6. They really could be 1-7 if it wasn't for the Taysom Hill interception in New Orleans. But the Giants really need to find offense. And what I like about this team right now, even though they're 2-6, defensively they're going to give you a problem. They're going to match up well. They're going to get pressure. They're going to slow you down. They just need their offense to find a rhythm early and put touchdowns up on the board. So this is a fascinating game for both teams for their own specific reasons. But I do like the Raiders because you could trust their offense. Even without Henry Ruggs on the roster anymore, their offense with Derek Carr, who's playing some of his best football, will give you enough eventually over this Giants defense that has proven to be one tough out each and every week. Buffalo travels to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, and the Bills right now are playing some really good ball on both sides. I'm just impressed with their defense, how fast they are up front, how athletic they are in the second and third levels, and how active they are on the back end when they turn the ball over. These are guys that can interchange at different positions, so they can match up with whatever you're going to throw at them from a personnel standpoint. They're able to match up. And I just think offensively, with the running game starting to show a little bit of life and Josh Allen starting to settle in a little bit more at the position, they're starting to peak at the right time. And they face a Jacksonville Jaguars team that's going to scratch and claw, pun intended, but they're going to go out there and play really hard for their head coach, Urban Meyer, but they just don't have enough bullets in the gun, so to speak, to really knock out a team like Buffalo. So if you're looking for an upset, just bypass this game because they're not going to upset Buffalo. And Buffalo won't stub their toe in trying to look ahead to a future opponent. They're going to take this opponent seriously, and they're going to knock them out and get the win. Lastly, before we hit another break, you have the Baltimore Ravens coming off of their bye week playing host to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings let one slip away against the Cowboys last weekend. They had an opportunity to win that game, but you can't have your quarterback, Kirk Cousins, getting outplayed by an undrafted rookie free agent or a 7th-round pick in Cooper Rush. He has to play better. He has to find targets down the field. He has to be dynamic. The problem in this matchup is that he's facing a defense in Baltimore that is as aggressive as he's faced all season long. They're coming off a bye. They're probably coming in more healthier than they were going into the bye week. So that's a dangerous Raven team that he's facing, especially on defense and on offense. We know Lamar Jackson's the best player on the field, whichever field he plays on and whatever game he's in. And that's going to be difficult for this Vikings team to deal with. So I do like Baltimore with that added rest, with the added health, and getting guys back healthy on both sides of the ball. This is about the time where they start to really turn it on. And it starts here, in my opinion, against Minnesota. Look for the Ravens to get another win at home. We'll step aside and take another quick break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show here on the Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show here on the Game Plus Network. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and let's get on with some more games. We'll look at the 4 p.m. window and the primetime games before we get out of here. And let's start with Philadelphia playing host to the Chargers. This is a very good matchup. Two good young quarterbacks coming in this ball game. And what I like most about the Chargers is the fact that they can beat you in a multitude of ways. They can throw it deep down the field. They can work you with their short passing game. And their run game can be productive enough. We saw them have some splash plays in that department last matchup. But they have to find a way to play consistent ball. I don't think they have played their best football yet. And I think that's something that they're going to try to start here against Philly. Now for the Eagles, great job running the football last week in their blowout win of the Detroit Lions. And before people say that was against the Lions, listen, they ran the football for the first time this year and it let the offense just operate organically. And I think that's what has to happen. You're not going to run like you did last weekend against the Chargers defense, but you will have some opportunities to run the football, operate with balance, and play a solid, complete game. I think that's something that I'm going to be looking forward to. This is about defense. I don't know if I can trust the Eagles defense yet, so I do like the Chargers in this game to get the win. Kansas City takes on Green Bay, and we know that Green Bay will be without starting quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who is unvaccinated, so he's going to miss this game. Now you get to see Jordan Love start his first NFL game, and I'm excited to see the young kid play because we know he was a high draft pick. We know he has a lot of talent, and he's being groomed behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 years at least, almost 2 years. So it's time to see what he's learned and how he can translate what he's learned behind the scenes on the practice field and also in mini camps and training camps and preseason out there on the field in a regular season game against a very good opponent that's trying to continue to win. They look sloppy against the Giants, but they're trying to get out there and build and stack multiple successful weeks on top of one another. So I'm excited to see how Jordan Love is going to play and what type of chemistry he has with these wide receivers. So it's going to be up on the defense, in my opinion, because they're facing Kansas City that's still trying to get out of their own way. They started early against the Giants. That first drive looked great. Then we saw the turnover in the red zone. So they just got to find a way to get back to basics, get back to neutral, eliminate the turnovers, and play a clean, consistent game. I think they could have some success because they're playing essentially a rookie in Jordan Love. I do like Kansas City to get the job done at home and when they're back to win their second consecutive game. Arizona goes out to San Francisco to take on the 49ers in a pivotal NFC West battle. The Cardinals, I thought, had an opportunity last week to knock off Green Bay, but they sort of sleptwalked through that ball game. I feel like the Cardinals tend to play up or down to the competition, and they allow Green Bay to really big boy them up front running the football. So they're going to have to regroup and figure out how can we stop the run better without a J.J. Watt. So I think that was the biggest key last weekend against Green Bay. So I'm excited to see how they're going to meet that challenge against San Francisco, who wants to come in and run the football. Now, the 49ers, they can play any type of game. We saw them start to have some success running the football early. Then they went into a lull, and then they got back to basics running the ball against the Bears and found themselves winning that ball game on the road. That was a very tough game for them because we saw the Bears building momentum with Justin Fields. They got back the momentum and ended up winning the game. But in this matchup, much better opponent, much better quarterback in terms of experience, and a team that really wants to get back that swagger that they had, that they lost, I feel a little bit of against the Packers. I like the Cardinals to get the job done. Staying out west, we have the Rams playing host to Tennessee. And this is going to be interesting because you don't have Derrick Henry out there in the backfield. You have a Ryan Tannehill that hadn't played really well, to be quite honest, the last couple of weeks. And he's going to be looking to play better against one of the best defenses that will be even better now, getting a Von Miller out there up front along the defensive line. So I'm fascinated by this matchup. This is going to be an entertaining game because you have the strength at wide receiver. You also have a new Adrian Peterson. We'll see how healthy, ready to go, how much he has left in the tank against his defense. And they may not have as much success running the football, but at least we know Adrian Peterson can still be a presence back there that can help them with their play action passing. But I do like the Rams. The Rams are just firing on all cylinders right now. They've gotten better on defense. They've gotten better on offense. Matt Stafford is playing some really good football. I think they're just so far along than Tennessee is right now. Tennessee is trying to piece things together as they move along. They got the great win last week against the Indianapolis Colts, but I think it stops here in L.A. I'm taking the Rams to get the win. And lastly, Pittsburgh is playing host to the Chicago Bears, so it's going to be interesting to watch the young rookie going up against that Mike Tomlin defense in Pittsburgh. I'm talking about Justin Fields, who started to find his sea legs, I thought, as a pro last week in San Francisco, giving you the glimpses of what he could potentially be down the line. So he's fun to watch. That offense is going to be fun to watch. Defensively, they're going to be able to get after Ben Roethlisberger, who didn't play particularly great last week against Cleveland, but he didn't play terrible, but he didn't play great. He played okay, but it was enough to get those guys to win a big win. But I feel like they can get another win here because you have the young quarterback in Fields going up against a defensive mastermind in Mike Tomlin and company. They'll throw some things at him. They'll confuse him a little bit. They'll force him into some bad decisions. But I just think that Pittsburgh's leadership and veteran presence on defense and the savviness of a Ben Roethlisberger will find enough plays to overtake the Chicago Bears. So that's it for this week's edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. I am Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. And that's where you can find our NFL All-32 podcast. We will see you guys next week in week number 10.
It's tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.